A banana and an alien ambassador. Jake was just a simple cargo pilot. He moved supplies between space stations, delivered food, and sometimes transported strange alien goods. It wasn't exciting, but it paid the bills. Right now, he was on orbital station Delta 9, a massive floating city in space. The air smelled like metal and fried food. Aliens of all shapes and sizes walked around, talking in strange languages. It was just another regular day. Jake peeled a banana, taking a bite as he waited for his next cargo assignment. But the moment he did, something unexpected happened. A tiny alien nearby let out a high-pitched scream. Jake nearly choked. The alien was small, about 3 feet tall, with smooth blue skin and big black eyes. It wore a golden robe and had 4 thin arms. Around it stood 8 armed guards, all pointing strange weapons at Jake. The little alien, now trembling, pointed a shaking finger at the banana. You dare hold the fruit of the gods." The alien whispered in a voice full of fear and awe. Jake frowned. Fruit of the gods. It was just a banana. The entire space station fell silent. Aliens nearby turned to look. The guards surrounding the tiny alien looked at each other nervously. Jake slowly put the banana down. "Oh, look, I don't want any trouble." Before he could finish, the tiny alien rushed forward and fell to its knees before him. "O great and powerful one," the alien said, bowing so low its forehead touched the floor. The prophecy was true. "The chosen protector has arrived." "The what now?" Jake blinked in confusion. He glanced around, hoping someone would explain. But the crowd only watched in shock. A tall, insect-like alien stepped forward. It wore a translator device around its neck. "Human," it said in a deep, buzzing voice. "Do you not realize who stands before you?" Jake looked at the small blue alien still bowing. A tiny dude with too many arms. Gasps filled the room. Someone in the back fainted. The insect alien hissed. "This is Ambassador Xylo, the supreme leader of the Zorvian people. His word alone determines peace or war among the stars." Jake's stomach dropped. "Oh, that's bad." Wait, hold on," Jake said, raising his hands. "I didn't mean any offense. I was just eating a banana." Ambassador Xylo looked up, his large eyes filled with excitement. "And that banana has chosen you. You are the guardian of the sacred fruit." Jake scratched his head. Was this a prank? The ambassador continued. "Long ago, our ancient texts spoke of a mighty warrior who would hold the divine golden crescent in his hands. That warrior would become the chosen protector of peace in the galaxy." Jake stared at his banana. "You mean this?" Xylo and his guards nodded in unison. Jake sighed. "Look, I don't know about any prophecy, but I'm just a guy trying to eat his breakfast." Xylo gasped. "The chosen one does not know his own power. Truly, this is the will of the universe." Before Jake could argue, Xylo clapped his 4 hands together. His guards immediately grabbed Jake by the arms. Wait, what's happening?" Jake struggled, but the aliens were surprisingly strong. "The prophecy must be fulfilled." Xylo said, "We must take you to our home planet at once. You must protect me." Jake tried to pull away, but the guards dragged him toward a large golden spaceship docked nearby. "Okay, hold on. Protect you from what?" Just then, a loud explosion shook the space station. Red warning lights flashed. The air filled with alarm sirens. Outside the station's large windows, dark ships appeared from the void. Their sleek black designs looked dangerous, their weapons already charging up. A robotic voice announced, "Warning, enemy forces detected. All civilians evacuate immediately." Jake's heart pounded. What the hell is happening? Xylo grabbed his sleeve, his small hands shaking. "They've come for me. They wish to stop the peace treaty." Jake stared at the enemy ships, realization hitting him. This wasn't just some crazy alien misunderstanding. This was an assassination attempt. And now, because of a stupid banana, he was right in the middle of it. Assassins in Space Hook. The spaceship shook violently, throwing Jake against a wall. A loud alarm blared, red warning lights flashing across the sleek interior. The floor vibrated as enemy lasers pounded against the ship's shields. "Status report," shouted one of Xylo's guards. "We're under attack," another yelled. 4 enemy fighters in pursuit, shields at 60%. Jake groaned, pushing himself off the floor. He was still trying to process what had happened in the last 10 minutes. One moment he was enjoying a banana. The next, he was being kidnapped by tiny blue aliens, dragged into a spaceship, and now they were being hunted through space. Jake stumbled to the nearest window. Outside, in the vast blackness of space, he saw 4 sleek enemy ships darting after them. Their dark, angular designs looked like deadly birds of prey. Green plasma shots streaked toward them, each hit shaking the ship. Xylo gripped the armrest of his floating chair, his eyes filled with fear. "They won't stop until I'm dead," he whispered. Jake's stomach twisted. "Who are they?" "The Varian Syndicate," one of the guards growled. "A ruthless group of mercenaries. Someone must have hired them to eliminate the ambassador." Jake ran a hand through his hair. "Great. So, do we have a plan, or are we just waiting to explode?" The pilot, a reptilian alien with dark green scales, hissed. "We're trying to jump to hyperspace, but the enemy ships are disrupting our drive. We can't escape." Jake glanced at the controls. He wasn't a soldier, but he was a pilot. And right now, they needed one. He shoved the co-pilot aside and grabbed the controls. "What are you doing?" Xylo shrieked. "Saving our butts," Jake muttered, gripping the joystick tightly. With a deep breath, he jerked the ship into a hard roll, barely dodging another plasma blast. The force of the move pressed everyone against their seats. He dived toward a nearby asteroid field, weaving between the massive floating rocks. The enemy fighters followed, but the tight space made it harder for them to aim. Jake grinned. "Let's see how good they really are." He cut the ship's engines for half a second, making it suddenly drop downward. The nearest enemy ship couldn't react fast enough and smashed into an asteroid, exploding in a fiery blast. One down. But before he could celebrate, another fighter locked onto them. A beeping noise warned him of an incoming missile. "Brace yourselves," Jake yelled. The missile launched, speeding toward them. Jake pulled a sharp U-turn, flying dangerously close to a large asteroid. At the last second, he rolled the ship behind it. The missile slammed into the rock, exploding harmlessly. Another enemy ship was caught in the explosion and spun out of control, slamming into debris. 2 down. Jake exhaled. "Not bad, huh?" Xylo gaped at him. You can actually fly." "Yeah," Jake grinned, "and I just saved your little blue butt." But before anyone could respond, the ship rocked again. The 2 remaining enemy fighters had stopped chasing and were holding position in the distance. That's when Jake noticed something new on the radar. A much bigger ship was approaching. And it was waiting for them. The enemy's plan. Jake felt a cold chill. This wasn't just a random attack. It was a trap. One of Xylo's guards, a tall feline-like alien, hissed. "They have a boarding ship. They plan to take the ambassador alive." Jake's fists clenched. Alive. That meant they weren't trying to assassinate Kylo. They were trying to capture him. Xylo's face went pale. "They want to take me to their leader." "Who's their leader?" Jake asked. The ambassador hesitated before whispering. "The warlord of Argos." A silence fell over the room. Even the battle-hardened guards looked uneasy. Jake didn't know much about galactic politics, but he knew that name. Argos was a ruthless warlord, responsible for destroying entire planets. If he wanted Xylo, it meant big trouble. "We have to get out of here," Jake said. "Now." The pilot hissed. "We can't. The hyperdrive is still jammed." Jake took a deep breath. "Then we need to fight back." The counterattack. Jake scanned the ship's controls. He needed a weapon. Something strong enough to disable the enemy's boarding vessel before it got too close. Then he saw it. A missile launcher. "Do we have targeting missiles?" he asked. The pilot hesitated. "Yes, but they air." "Good enough for me," Jake interrupted. "Fire them now." The pilot pressed a button, and two powerful missiles shot out toward the large enemy ship. The enemy reacted fast, deploying countermeasures. The first missile was destroyed midair, but the second one, it slammed into the boarding ship's side, tearing through its armor. Fire and smoke erupted from the impact. Jake grinned. That should slow them down. But then, boom! A massive explosion rocked their own ship. Jake was thrown against the controls. The alarm screamed louder. Sparks flew from the walls. "What was that?" Jake yelled. One of the guards checked the sensors. "There's a tracker on our ship. They know exactly where we're going." Jake's stomach sank. They couldn't run. They couldn't hide. And worst of all, the warlord's forces would never stop chasing them. Landing on a dangerous planet. Look! The ship groaned as it lurched through the void of space. The crackling energy shields flickered briefly before stabilizing. Jake could feel the hum of the engines beneath his feet, a constant reminder that the enemy was still hunting them. They were barely holding on, but there was no escape unless they did something drastic. And Jake wasn't about to give up now. "We need to land somewhere safe," Jake said, gripping the controls tightly. He had no experience in deep space evasion, but the heat of the moment was forcing his instincts to take over. "We can't stay here much longer," Silo said from behind him, his voice shaky. "If they catch us, they'll destroy everything. The warlord will use me as a symbol to unite his forces, a signal of victory." Jake's jaw tightened. He couldn't let that happen. "Where can we go?" he asked, looking back at the alien ambassador. Hilo was staring at the navigation map, his thin fingers tapping the display, though Jake knew it was more out of nervousness than practicality. "There is a planet, Thraxis 4, Xylo said. It's an uncharted world, a jungle planet on the edge of the galaxy. Few dare to go there, but it might be the only place we can hide." Jake glanced out of the viewfinder, and the space around them was as dark and endless as ever. They had no choice. "Set a course," Jake ordered. The planet of danger. Thraxis 4 was unlike anything Jake had ever seen. When the ship broke through the clouds, it felt like they were descending into the heart of a living nightmare. Below them, the planet was covered in thick, tangled jungles that stretched far and wide, twisted trees with brightly colored vines hanging like serpents in the air. The vast green canopy seemed to breathe, and in the distance, mountains with jagged peaks loomed, piercing through the mist like tall, menacing fingers. "I'm telling you," Jake said, eyes wide, "this place looks like it came straight out of a bad dream." Stylo's face went even paler than usual. "It is worse than you think. There are rumors of creatures, massive predators that hunt in these jungles. They don't leave survivors." Jake smirked. "Well, maybe we'll get lucky." "Luck won't save us here," Xylo muttered. The ship came in for a hard landing, jerking violently as it hit the jungle floor. The thrusters whined, and the metal groaned as the ship slowly came to a halt, its nose plowing into the soft, muddy ground. Jake threw off his harness and leaped to his feet. "We're not exactly safe yet," Jake said, grabbing his jacket. "We need to move fast, get to the trees, get hidden, and find shelter." The rest of the crew was already scrambling, checking the ship for damage. But Silo hesitated. "I don't think you understand. Human," Xylo said. "These creatures aren't just animals. They are ancient forces. They don't just hunt for food. They hunt for blood. And they will not stop until they have it." Jake could hear the panic in Silo's voice, and for the first time, he started to realize that this mission was more dangerous than he ever expected. But he wasn't going to back down now. Not after everything that had happened. Not after everything they had been through. "We'll survive," Jake said firmly. "We have no other choice." The hunt begins. The moment they stepped out of the ship, the air was thick with humidity. The jungle smelled like wet earth and decaying plant life. The ground soft and springy beneath their feet. Huge, strange trees stretched upwards, their bark smooth and shiny, like they were covered in a slick film of liquid. The sky was dark, filled with swirling clouds, casting the entire landscape in an eerie twilight. Jake didn't have much time to appreciate the alien beauty of it all. They had barely taken a few steps when Silo suddenly froze, his eyes wide with terror. "What is it?" Jake asked, turning around. Silo raised a hand to his lips, signaling for silence. Then he pointed into the jungle. From the shadows of the trees, something moved, something big. Its shape was hidden by the thick foliage, but Jake could make out a pair of glowing yellow eyes. The creature was large, massive, like a tiger mixed with some kind of reptile. Its skin shimmered in the dim light, blending with the environment, and its eyes gleamed with an intelligent malice. Jake cursed under his breath. "What is that?" "That," Xylo whispered, "is a Thraxian hunter, a predator unlike any other. It's known for its speed, stealth, and deadly precision. They are perfect hunters, built to track their prey and never miss a kill." Jake's heart began to pound as the creature's glowing eyes locked onto him. Its massive body stirred, and he could hear the low growl rumbling from deep within its chest. It was coming for them. "Run!" Jake shouted. They bolted into the jungle, sprinting through the undergrowth as fast as they could. Jake could hear the creature's pounding footsteps behind them, its growls growing louder and louder. But it wasn't just one. More eyes appeared. From all around them, other creatures, similar in size and shape, emerged from the shadows. The jungle seemed to come alive with the sounds of deadly hunters closing in. They were surrounded. "We're being hunted," Jake muttered. "We've got to find cover." Now. They reached a dense thicket of thorny bushes, and Jake shoved through, pulling Silo and the others with him. The creatures slowed, clearly not eager to follow through the thorns. But they were waiting, watching. "They're not going to leave us alone," Xylo whispered. "We need to find shelter before night falls. If we don't, we will never survive the night." The rest of the crew was already scrambling, checking the ship for damage. But Silo hesitated. "I don't think you understand. Human," Xylo said. "These creatures aren't just animals. They are ancient forces. They don't just hunt for food. They hunt for blood. And they will not stop until they have it." Jake could hear the panic in Silo's voice, and for the first time, he started to realize that this mission was more dangerous than he ever expected. But he wasn't going to back down now. Not after everything that had happened. Not after everything they had been through. "We'll survive," Jake said firmly. "We have no other choice." The hunt begins. The moment they stepped out of the ship, the air was thick with humidity. The jungle smelled like wet earth and decaying plant life, the ground soft and springy beneath their feet. Huge, strange trees stretched upwards, their bark smooth and shiny, like they were covered in a slick film of liquid. The sky was dark, filled with swirling clouds, casting the entire landscape in an eerie twilight. Jake didn't have much time to appreciate the alien beauty of it all. They had barely taken a few steps when Silo suddenly froze, his eyes wide with terror. "What is it?" Jake asked, turning around. Silo raised a hand to his lips, signaling for silence. Then he pointed into the jungle. From the shadows of the trees, something moved, something big. Its shape was hidden by the thick foliage, but Jake could make out a pair of glowing yellow eyes. The creature was large, massive, like a tiger mixed with some kind of reptile. Its skin shimmered in the dim light, blending with the environment, and its eyes gleamed with an intelligent malice. Jake cursed under his breath. "What is that?" "That," Xylo whispered, "is a Thraxian hunter. A predator unlike any other. It's known for its speed, stealth, and deadly precision. They are perfect hunters, built to track their prey and never miss a kill." Jake's heart began to pound as the creature's glowing eyes locked onto him. Its massive body stirred, and he could hear the low growl rumbling from deep within its chest. It was coming for them. "Run!" Jake shouted. They bolted into the jungle, sprinting through the undergrowth as fast as they could. Jake could hear the creature's pounding footsteps behind them, its growls growing louder and louder. But it wasn't just one. More eyes appeared. From all around them, other creatures, similar in size and shape, emerged from the shadows. The jungle seemed to come alive with the sounds of deadly hunters closing in. They were surrounded. "We're being hunted," Jake muttered. "We've got to find cover. Now." They reached a dense thicket of thorny bushes, and Jake shoved through, pulling Xylo and the others with him. The creatures slowed, clearly not eager to follow through the thorns. But they were waiting, watching. "They're not going to leave us alone," Xylo whispered. "We need to find shelter before night falls. If we don't, we will never survive the night. A betrayal in the stars." "Look." Jake sat in the ship's dimly lit cabin, staring out at the endless expanse of space. He couldn't shake the assassin's words from his mind. Everything that had happened, the banana, the ambassador, the relentless attacks, felt less like coincidence and more like a well-laid trap. And then there was the warlord, a name he'd only heard in whispers, but those whispers carried a chill. Argos was a figure of myth and terror. Entire worlds had burned under his command. And now this brutal warlord wanted Xylo. The question gnawed at Jake. Why? Why go to such lengths for one small alien ambassador? A quiet shuffle broke Jake's thoughts. He turned to see one of Xylo's guards entering the room. The tall, feline-like alien nodded respectfully, its sharp eyes scanning the area before speaking. "Jake," it said, its voice low, "we've discovered something troubling." Jake's eyebrows lifted. "What now? More assassins?" "No," the guard said. "It's worse. We found a hidden communications device aboard the ship. Someone has been transmitting our location to the enemy." Jake's stomach dropped. "A spy?" The guard nodded. "Someone on this ship has betrayed us." The search for the traitor. Jake followed the guard to the ship's central control room, where the other crew members had gathered. Xylo stood at the forefront, his small frame tense. The blue alien ambassador looked around the room, his usually wide eyes narrowed in anger. "This betrayal," Xylo said, "has endangered not just me, but the mission. If Argos forces know where we are, they will come. They will destroy everything." Jake surveyed the crew. There were 6 of them in total, 3 Zorvian guards, the reptilian pilot, a quiet insectoid engineer, and Xylo himself. Someone in this room was a traitor. Who would do this? Jake asked, his gaze scanning the faces. "What's in it for them?" The pilot hissed, her green scales shimmering under the cabin lights. "Perhaps they were offered freedom. Or wealth. Argos has ways of making even the most loyal turn." One of the guards stepped forward. "We should search everyone's quarters. Check all devices. Someone here is working with the enemy." "Wait," Jake interrupted. "Let's think this through. If the spy knows we're onto them, they might do something desperate." The engineer clicked his mandibles nervously. "What do you suggest?" Jake looked at Xylo. "We set a trap. Send out a fake transmission, something only the spy would respond to. When they try to contact Argos, we'll know who it is." The trap. It didn't take long to put the plan into motion. The pilot sent out a coded message claiming they were heading to a nearby uninhabited moon. The crew then waited, tense and silent, as the ship's monitoring systems kept watch for any outgoing signals. Hours passed. Jake could feel the anxiety thick in the air. The crew members avoided eye contact, their distrust of each other growing with every minute. Even Xylo seemed unusually quiet, his tiny hands clasped tightly as he stared at the console. Then it happened. A quiet ping echoed through the room. The engineer's station lit up. "There," the engineer said. "An outgoing transmission. It's coming from the storage bay." Jake's heart raced. "Who's down there?" One of the guards frowned. "Only Neri." She volunteered to inventory the supplies. The reptilian pilot's eyes narrowed. "Nari, but she's been with us for years." Jake didn't wait to hear more. He grabbed a handheld blaster and headed straight for the storage bay. Silo and two guards close behind him. The confrontation. When they entered the storage bay, they found Neri standing near a crate, her back to them. A small device glowed faintly in her hand, its tiny antenna blinking. "Neri," Jake said, his voice firm. "Step away from the crate." She froze. For a moment, it seemed like she might deny everything. But then she sighed, turned slowly, and looked at them with weary eyes. "I did what I had to," she said. "Why?" Silo demanded, stepping forward. "After all we've been through, why would you betray us?" Neri's reptilian features tightened. "You don't understand what Argos is capable of. He came to my homeworld, destroyed my city, enslaved my family. He promised to let them go if I gave him you." Jake lowered his blaster slightly. He hadn't expected this. "You think Argos keeps promises," Jake said. "You think he'll free your family if you hand Silo over. He'll kill them the moment he gets what he wants." Neri's eyes flickered with doubt, but her claws tightened on the device. "I had no choice." "There's always a choice," Jake said, stepping closer. "But you don't have to face him alone. We can fight back. We can stop him. Together." The final stand. Hook. The shimmering surface of Silo's home planet, Zorvax Prime, came into view through the ship's main viewport. Its golden oceans reflected the system's twin suns, and the sky was a cascade of shifting colors. What should have been a stunning moment of triumph was anything but. Jake stood behind the pilot's seat, arms crossed, as the tension in the cabin threatened to boil over. "There's no way they don't know we're here," Jake said. The pilot nodded grimly. "If we land, we'll be stepping right into their trap." "Not if we make a trap of our own," Jake said, turning to Silo. "Do you still have access to Zorvax's planetary defenses?" Silo hesitated, his small blue face unusually pale. "Yes, but they were deactivated years ago. No one has used them since the end of the Great Expansion War. I don't even know if they still work." Jake gave him a steady look. "They'll work. We'll make sure of it. If we don't take control of those defenses, we're sitting ducks." Silo straightened, his fear slowly giving way to determination. "Then we'll have to act quickly. The warlord won't wait." Touching down in a war zone. The landing was tense and quiet. As the ship approached the ancient city of Zorvax Citadel, the atmosphere seemed heavy. The city was both magnificent and eerie. Its towering golden spires gleamed in the sunlight, but the streets were deserted. No laughter, no crowds, only the soft whistle of the wind through abandoned buildings. Jake and the crew stepped out into the main square. Every step they took echoed against the silent stone walls. Silo led the way, his head held high, though Jake could tell he was forcing his courage. "The Defense Control Center is at the top of the Zorvian Palace," Silo said. "It will give us access to the planetary shields, the automated turrets, and the orbital bombardment array." "Sounds good to me," Jake replied. "Let's get moving before they catch up." They ascended the palace's wide steps, entering the massive halls of what once was Zorvax's seat of power. The interior was breathtaking. Polished crystal floors, walls etched with ancient Zorvian hieroglyphs, and ceilings so high they seemed to stretch into infinity. But the beauty couldn't hide the feeling of impending danger. As they climbed higher, Silo explained how the defenses worked, pointing out the long-dormant power relays and control stations they passed along the way. They needed to reach the command center and re-engage the systems before Argos's forces arrived. And then, as they reached the final staircase, they heard it, a distant rumble. The walls seemed to vibrate. Jake turned to Silo, his voice low. "They're here." The arrival of Argos. From the palace's vantage point, Jake could see the enemy fleet arriving through the clouds. The warlord's flagship, a massive, jagged monstrosity bristling with weapons, hovered menacingly over the city. Smaller assault ships darted around it like hornets, already deploying troops to the ground. Xilo's voice trembled. "If we don't activate the defenses now, Zorvax will fall. Everything we've fought for will be lost." Jake took a deep breath. "You get those defenses up. I'll hold them off." "What?" Xilo's eyes widened. "You can't face them alone." "Who said I'd be alone?" Jake turned to the rest of the crew. "You're all coming with me." The guards nodded. The pilot grinned, her sharp teeth glinting in the pale light. "About time we hit them back," she said. The final battle. They set up their defense in the palace's great hall. With its massive columns and towering statues, it provided a good position to hold off the incoming troops. Jake directed the others to position themselves behind the ancient stone walls, which were thick enough to absorb blaster fire. The first wave came fast. Dozens of enemy troops poured through the wide entrance, their armor gleaming black and their weapons firing in tight, controlled bursts. Jake ducked behind a pillar, returned fire, and motioned for one of the guards to flank them. Blaster bolts lit up the room like fireworks. The sound of explosions echoed off the vaulted ceiling. The Zorvian guards fought fiercely, their energy blades clashing against the enemy's plasma rifles. Jake held his own, taking out enemy after enemy with precise shots. "How's it going up there?" he shouted into his communicator. Xilo's voice crackled back. "Almost. There. Just a few more connections." Jake ducked as an explosion sent debris flying. He looked over at the pilot, who was using her tail to whip one of the enemy soldiers off his feet. "This is starting to get a little too exciting." The pilot laughed. "You said you wanted action." Jake grinned despite himself. "Not this much action." The second wave was tougher. The enemy brought in heavily armored shock troopers, their weapons packing more punch. Jake's crew had to fall back to the inner chamber, using every scrap of cover they could find. The fight became more desperate. Jake's shoulders ached, and his trigger finger burned from constant firing. "Xilo," he called again. "We're outnumbered here. We need those defenses." A desperate move. Above them, the flagship moved closer, its massive cannons starting to target the palace. Jake could see the enemy troops falling back, retreating out of the main hall. For a brief moment, he thought they might have won. But then he realized what was happening. "They're clearing the area," Jake said, his stomach dropping. "They're going to fire on the palace." Xilo's voice finally came through. "Jake, I've got it. The defenses are online." Just as the flagship's cannons began to glow, the palace itself responded. Ancient turrets rose from hidden alcoves, and golden energy shields snapped into place around the building. The first cannon blast slammed into the shield and dissipated. A second blast was deflected entirely. The palace's automated defense systems roared to life. Energy beams shot up from the ground, tearing into the enemy fleet. Turrets hidden in the city's towers began picking off assault ships one by one. The flagship wavered, its shields flickering under the sudden counterattack. "It's working," Jake yelled. Xilo appeared at the top of the stairs, his face filled with determination. "We have control of the planet's defense grid. Zorvax will not fall today." The chosen protector. Hook. The massive warship loomed in the skies above Zorvax Prime, casting a shadow so vast it turned day into twilight. Jake stared at the monstrous vessel through the palace's cracked viewport, feeling the weight of its presence. This wasn't just a fleet. It was the Argos dreadnought, a leviathan of destruction that had obliterated entire planets. And now it had come for them. Beside him, Xilo was uncharacteristically silent. The ambassador's small frame seemed even smaller as he watched the enemy ship approach. The planet's newly reactivated defense systems were holding off smaller attack ships, but they wouldn't stand a chance against the dreadnought's firepower. "What's the plan, Silo?" Jake asked. His voice was calm, but inside, he was bracing himself. He had faced death plenty of times during this insane journey, but this felt different. This was the endgame. Silo finally turned to him, his wide black eyes filled with both fear and determination. "We have one option," he said. "We must confront Argos directly." Jake raised an eyebrow. "Confront? As in talk? Because I don't think he's going to listen to reason." "No," Silo replied. "Not talk. Fight. The final battle." The plan was simple in concept, though Jake had to admit it sounded more like a desperate last stand. The palace's ancient systems included one weapon so powerful, so destructive, it had only been used once in the entire history of Zorvax. The solar lance, a massive energy cannon capable of tearing through even the strongest shields. The catch: it had to be manually aimed and fired from the palace's highest tower. And to get there, they would have to fight their way through Argos's ground forces. Jake suited up, strapping on the closest thing to armor he could find: an old Zorvian chestplate and a makeshift energy shield generator. Around him, Silo's guards armed themselves with ancient energy blades and plasma rifles. Silo himself carried only a small ceremonial staff, but his determined expression made Jake believe that he wasn't as defenseless as he seemed. "Stick together," Jake said as they prepared to move out. "Watch each other's backs, and don't stop until we reach that tower." The push through the palace. They moved out as a team, cutting through the palace's great hall and into the lower chambers. The sounds of battle echoed from every direction. Automated defense turrets continued firing on enemy ships outside, while Argos's ground troops poured into the palace's lower levels. Jake's blaster hummed as he took down one soldier after another. The Zorvian guards fought with a coordinated precision that surprised him. They moved like a single unit, their energy blades flashing as they cut through enemy ranks. But the closer they got to the tower, the more intense the fighting became. Argos' elite troops, hulking, heavily armored soldiers, blocked their path. Jake barely had time to duck behind a column before a burst of plasma fire nearly took his head off. "This is insane," Jake shouted as he returned fire. "Keep moving," one of the guards yelled. Jake and the others pressed forward, inch by inch. He felt his legs burning from the effort, his arms aching as he fired shot after shot. But the thought of stopping, of giving up, never crossed his mind. Xylem needed him. The galaxy needed him. Reaching the tower. After what felt like hours of relentless fighting, they finally reached the tower entrance. The door was sealed, and Silo stepped forward, pressing his small hand against a glowing panel. Ancient Zorvian runes lit up, and the door slid open with a low, grinding noise. "We're in," Jake said, turning to see the guards holding the rear. But they won't stay down for long. As they climbed the spiral staircase inside the tower, Jake could hear the distant thrum of the dreadnought's engines. It was moving into position to unleash its full firepower on the planet. They were running out of time. When they reached the top of the tower, Jake was taken aback by what he saw. The solar lance was a massive weapon, its base surrounded by glowing control panels and intricate carvings that pulsed with golden light. The weapon's barrel extended through an open platform, aimed toward the sky. "Xylo, can you do this?" Jake asked, his voice steady. Xylo nodded, though Jake could see the nervous twitch in his hands. "I can align it," the ambassador said. "But once I do, someone will need to maintain the charge manually. It won't fire on its own." "Let me guess," Jake said. "That someone is me." Silo gave him a small, sad smile. "I would not ask this of you if there were another way." The dreadnought's final approach. Jake stepped onto the open platform, feeling the wind whip around him. Above, the dreadnought filled the sky, its massive bulk blocking out the stars. He could see its main cannon charging, a brilliant red light that seemed to vibrate through the air. "I'll hold it," Jake said, gripping the weapon's charging mechanism. "You get those coordinates locked in and fire this thing." Xylo worked quickly, his fingers dancing across the control panel. The solar lance began to hum, golden energy gathering at its core. But just as it seemed they might have a chance, the platform shook violently. Jake looked back to see enemy soldiers scaling the tower's outer walls, their boots magnetized to the surface. Plasma fire erupted, forcing him to duck behind the weapon's massive barrel. "Xylo, we're running out of time." "Just a moment more." Xylo called back. The final shot. The dreadnought's cannon fired. A blinding beam of energy shot toward the planet's surface, but at the last second, the newly activated planetary shields absorbed the blast. The impact shook the tower, but the solar lance remained stable. "Now, Xylo," Jake shouted. The ambassador pressed the final command. The solar lance's golden energy surged forward, blasting upward with a sound like a thunderclap. The beam tore through the dreadnought's shields, striking its core. For a moment, everything went still, and then the dreadnought began to fracture. Massive explosions rippled across its surface as the monstrous ship broke apart, raining fiery debris across the atmosphere. Jake stepped back from the weapon, breathing heavily. "Did we get it?" he asked, looking at Xylo. Xylo nodded, his expression a mixture of relief and exhaustion. "The warlord's flagship is destroyed. Zorvax Prime is safe."